So this is the main post. Hashtag 4 moons. I said, I think that the month or two, or maybe 4 months before the time reversal, they'll start revealing things that they've previously censored, or as conspiracy theory. This will be as part of the counterfeit awakening, because I believe Satan will try to do everything the Lord does. So, if the commands from the heaven of the Lord descend and they resonate, let's say, for example, awakening, then I guess Satan will try to do something similar as a counterfeit so that he can go against the Lord's command. But before I continue with this particular post, um, I would like to go take a sidetrack on the link I added to it. The link is from this post, this tweet that talks about time reversal. And I'm saying, due to some dreams, a dream I had, and a dream from Pastor Dana, and in some of what I see as rituals, and in even the name, right, of the season, it's called the fall. The time reversal may be planned for the fall or autumn season. So I'm deducing that by a dream I had, which is in one of my previous posts. It was, I think, the only post I did that had 3 parts. I talked about dreams and interpretations, and basically I had gone back in time, and I started running back to, get back to the correct time. And I was looking on the ground and I saw that there were leaves on the ground. So, anyway, I go on to say, why is it important? So, why is the time reversal important? Now, when the Lord told us to descend, right? So, I could have put some of the verses of the Quran as well. Maybe I'll do that when I edit the video, or maybe I'll just try to make it short. But um, one of the verses, or the verse in the Quran that makes me believe that the Messiah, who I believe is the heir, the successor to Adam's throne, Adam's spirit of knowing all things, the Messiah, I believe, was born in paradise before the fall. And I say that because there is a particular verse in the Quran that says, it talks about when God created Adam and Eve, right? Hawa. He said, when he covered her, she carried a light burden. So basically, she became pregnant. And then she goes on, and then it becomes heavy, right? The pregnancy became heavy. He said, and then they supplicated the Lord, if you would give us a good child, we would be grateful. He said, but when he gave them a good child, they associated partners with the Lord concerning that which he had given them. So it's almost like they ate from the tree and it had to do with the child somehow. I don't know, right? So I've always contended that this might be the Messiah they're talking about. So what else? So yeah, after they ate from the tree, the forbidden tree, and I don't want to do a lot of sidetracking, so I'll try to stay on point. The Lord asked them to descend from paradise. And in Islam, we know that there are 7 heavens. There's the throne of God, basically like the CPU, where all the commands are. And then there are the 7 heavens. Now, I don't know how time relates to the 7 heavens. It may be that things are happening simultaneously, but at the same time, they are perceived as in the future or in the past or something like that, right? So the way you might perceive something in another heaven whilst you are in one heaven might not be accurate in terms of the time or the duration of time, or when that command might fall into your heaven, right? And I will talk about that. Um, I'll talk about that when I talk about Allah being the Lord of the ways of ascent. That's one of the ways he's described in the Quran, as the Lord of the ways of ascent. So the ways of ascending the heavens, and I guess also descending the heavens, right? So when the Lord said, descend all of you from paradise after, the disobedience, eating from the tree, um, Satan at some point asked for reprieve. So basically for his judgment to be delayed until the time they are resurrected. And I think this resurrection is different from the resurrection at the end of the world where everybody dies and they are resurrected in body, right? So actually, I'm talking about two different times. Um, the time Satan asked for reprieve was after the Lord had commanded that they should prostrate to Adam. And Satan refused. He said, and then the Lord asked him, "O Iblis, what is the matter with you that you are not of those who prostrate?" He said, "Never would I prostrate to a human being whom you created out of clay." So Allah said, "Get out of it, for indeed you are expelled. And indeed upon you is the curse until the day of recompense." So he said, "My Lord, then reprieve me until the day they are resurrected." So Allah said, "Indeed you are of those reprieved until the day of the time well known." So now this is different from the time everybody was asked to descend. One interesting point here too, though, is that Adam had already been given life. The Lord had breathed his spirit into Adam. But Satan wasn't just talking about Adam because Adam already had life. He was saying until the time they are resurrected. So it's like Satan was talking about mankind altogether, right? So interestingly, very recently, I think it was yesterday, in fact, I was listening to Pastor Sandy from the Soldiers for Christ Community Church. And he was talking about, I mean, I already knew that there were two creations of Adam, right? In paradise and on earth. But I mean, but okay. He was talking about in the Bible, they were talking about Elohim, the first creation, and they created mankind, right? And then in the second creation, they created Adam, who was a quickening spirit, right? So it's possible that man had already been created on earth, right? Before the Lord sent the spirit, right, down on earth. So it may be that before Adam was sent as the first prophet, so it may be that mankind was on earth, but then the spirit, Adam descended as the first prophet, right? Anyway, so that was the time Satan asked for reprieve. Now let's talk about the time they were all asked to descend. That was after Adam and Eve had eaten from the forbidden tree. So it says, and the Lord said to them, "O Adam, dwell you and your wife in paradise, and eat from wherever you will, but do not approach this tree, lest you be amongst the wrongdoers." But Satan whispered to them to make apparent to them that which was concealed from them of their private parts. He said, "Your Lord did not forbid you this tree, except you become angels or become the immortal." And he swore by Allah to them, "Indeed, I am to you from amongst the sincere advisors." So he made them fall through deceit. And when they tasted of the tree, their private parts became apparent to them, and they began to fasten together over themselves from the trees of paradise. And their Lord called to them, did I not forbid you from that tree and tell you that Satan is to you a clear enemy? They said, our Lord, we have wronged ourselves, and if you do not forgive us and have mercy upon us, we will surely be among the losers. Allah said, descend, being to one another enemies, and for you on the earth is a place of settlement and enjoyment for a time. He said, therein you will live, and therein you will die, and from it you will be brought forth. So it's possible that this is the time they want to resonate with, the time that they all fall. So in the spiritual sense, right, because I don't think Adam was sent in the body form. And we can get into the seven earths of the seven heavens, right? But that's not what this is about. So it may be that the time of their resurrection is the time of the fall of the spirit of Adam, when the spirit descends, right? But that is not to our knowledge. I'm just speculating as to why the time reversal may be important. And, so if I'm looking at, like I was telling you, I was saying just now about time, right? So let's say, for example, this is speculation on my part. Let's say Adam exists in the highest heaven, but he is also in the lowest heaven, but he has not fallen yet in the highest heaven. So in the lowest heaven, even though technically this heaven is lower, but his mental and spiritual connection is at the highest level in that heaven, right? He's the best a person could be in the lowest heaven. But then when he falls from the highest heaven, he descends to the lowest heaven. But that descension also might be interpreted as a decline in IQ, a decline in spiritual connection, right? So basically, Satan asked for reprieve. And I understand that to mean that Satan still possesses his abilities. He possesses the very high IQ, but only for a particular time, right? So it may be that the time is coming for his fall or and our resurrection slash ascension, when we may remember our true names, when this heaven and the one above it open a doorway slash ladder between them. So in the Quran, it describes Allah as the Lord of the ways of ascent. And in that particular part of the Quran, it talked about how the commands, right, will ascend back to him in a day that is 1,000 years. So my idea in this is there are some commands that descend daily. There are some commands that descend yearly. There are some commands that descend every 1,000 years, something like that, right? And when these commands descend, it's almost like there has to be an opening between one heaven and the other so that whatever angel can descend, right? And there are different types of angel, but the ones that come with these commands have to descend through certain portals, right? And maybe some portals can allow back and forth, whereas some portals can only allow one way, right? It's almost like if you're thinking of a digital circuit, like a diode can allow current to flow one direction but not in another. I think many of the things God gives us in our physical reality is so that we can understand some of the things in the heavens, because everything we create on earth, it is because God had created it, right? And because his commands descend through the heavens, so it's almost like everything we have is sort of like an interpretation of something in the heavens, right? So it may be that there is a time that is coming, right, which would be equivalent to the fall or resurrection, the command for resurrection, right? Like we fulfilled our term. Satan asked for reprieve, so he wasn't punished. We were punished, but now we fulfilled our term, right? The time is coming to an end, and then when that command comes, there has to be like a doorway, an opening, right? So there has to be a connection, right, between one heaven and the other, so that the command can come for us to ascend, right? So the doorway is opened, but also Satan has to fall, right? So I'm saying when that doorway is open, so that the two heavens are in sync and the spiritual commands are interpreted by physical realities. So when the command descends, if the soil has not been prepared well, if the neural network in the brain is not right, it may fail the interpretation by some degree. What do I mean by that? So I think of it this way. The Lord talks about it is He who moves the winds, and then they move the clouds, right? They gather the clouds, and then they send rain upon a land that was dead before, and the rain gives life to that land. So if you look at it from a spiritual context, the soil is our spirit, our mind, our hearts. By our recitation, seeking the Lord, fasting from the world, and all that, we prepare in the soil. We prepare in our minds, we prepare in our hearts. So when those inspirations come in waves, they gather the clouds, right? We get insights. We get more of hope. We seek more. Yeah, sometimes we get more depressed because we're thinking, oh, why not now? When is it coming? Right. So then when it finally rains, when the command has gathered all the clouds, when the command has come down fully, right, then it rains. Now, if you had prepared your soil, your heart, if the soil has been prepared, then the fruits will grow very well. Whereas in a bad land, fruits may not grow. In fact, weeds may grow, right? So similarly, everything in this physical reality, right, has to interpret a spiritual command. So even in the physical world, if the Lord sends a spiritual command for rain, right, to bring, if a spiritual command to revive the land, beautify it with flowers, right? Flowers don't just grow all of a sudden. It might rain, and then some parts of the land might produce flowers, other parts might not produce anything, right? But basically, the physics, it's almost like even in a computer, right? You have certain physical components that interpret certain commands that make you. So similarly in the world, right? So now, if you're looking at the brain, even through the trials we go through, it's almost like it's shaping the brain, right? The clay is being molded, right? So we go through certain experiences, our heart softens, right? We go through certain experiences, we realize some of our evils, some of our things, the things we need to change, right? So it's almost like our brain network is being rewired so that when the command comes, right, it comes perfectly. But if the soil has been prepared perfectly, when the command comes, it interprets it perfectly, right? Then the person becomes maybe 100% enlightened. But maybe the other person didn't prepare so well, so maybe 50% enlightened, and maybe the other person, in fact, didn't prepare at all. So in fact, instead of becoming 1% enlightened, he descends even further from the condition he was, right? So if he was even at zero, now he's at negative 50 or something, right? So that's also a possibility. So now, if this is the case, right, then what happens when that time nears, when the heavens are in sync, right, because of the ascension and also the fall of Satan, right? I think it will make sense that the evil one or the evil ones will try their best to prevent us from remembering, from coming into terms into our true selves. So I believe that the who you are is your name, the true name the Lord gave you, your purpose, your position with Him, right? Because I think we existed before this time, right? We had existed somewhere in the unknown, in the unseen, right? Then we existed also probably in paradise before the descent in the backbone of Adam, you could say, right? So because we are in a fallen state, because we are dead or in a drunken state, we cannot remember. And Satan doesn't want us to remember. He doesn't want us to become one with the Lord, right? He doesn't want us to know our true names, to come to our true realization of who we are. So he may be trying to put into our minds things like nanobots and these other things like biobots, so that when the CERN mesh, so that when the time comes, the CERN machine can be turned on, and then some of these nanobots can be activated so that it does a physical rewiring of your brain so that these commands are not interpreted correctly, right? And then he would be able to influence you towards his counterfeit awakening, right? So I believe that's the importance of the time reversal and how it relates to probably V's. That's my speculation, because I have to think of, if there's an evil person in the world, which I believe there is, Satan, then he what could his goals be, and how could he be going about in bringing his goals to fruition, right? So let's go to the main post um, that caused me to sidetrack here. So I was saying that when I think that when the time comes close, right, um, they will start revealing things that now they are censoring as conspiracy theory, right? Let's say, for example, we're saying the V's have nanobots. We're saying the V's may have, uh, components that the artificial intelligence can control. That we're saying it's possible, the V's may relate to the singularity, right? Where we are all attached to this artificial intelligence, this God AI, right? So that we could be one under his control. But I think there will be some people the Lord will still be able to save from that, right? So, but if they know the time is coming near, maybe it will be the time when Nibiru is the nearest, right? So the veil is thin, and maybe that's the physical representation of that particular doorway, that particular ladder, right? When this heaven connects to the one above it, maybe Nibiru is the physical representation of um, that spiritual command. So they may know the time is coming to near. The time is near, and Satan may know that he's about to fall. He's about to lose those powers of high IQ, manipulation, being able to see, for example. There are some people even without that very high IQ, like Satan, right? They have just the sense to be able to see a little bit within the other dimension. So some people, for example, even in African culture, they will tell you that I can see a witch. I know that person is a witch, or I can see demons, right? So some people can see your aura. When you're angry, you vibrate a certain frequency. Everything is frequency, and frequency emits light, right? So it makes sense that some people will be able to see your aura and say, oh, this person is probably angry, or this person is probably jealous right now, right? So they may start revealing that, in fact, okay, yes, you were right about the V's. We see how they're flip-flopping even nowadays. Oh, it was leaked from the lab. No, that's conspiracy theory. They take down all the channels that are saying that. But now they're saying, oh yeah, maybe there's truth to it. So all the things they're censoring, right? They may start saying, okay, yes, we found out that it's true, right? Now what can we do about it? And then maybe they might start saying, in fact, it was a weapon, and some people knew that it was bad, but they willingly went on with it, right? So they will start exposing, waking some people up, like a rude awakening for some people, because some of us already, you know, guess that evil people control the world, and just like they've done throughout the past years, as the Bible and the Quran have been telling you of the leaders in the past. But for some reason, a lot of us believe like Satan went on vacation, right? He's no longer plotting evils, right? He's no longer controlling the minds of the rulers as he did before, because some of us are asleep. We believe everything we see in the physical world. We believe everything we are told, right? Some of us are just like that. We're asleep. So they may start waking people up, and you may start so it will be a sort of a counterfeit awakening, like even now, right? I believe the AI is training, even with how it's, some people are getting prophecies, right? Some people say they're hearing God and all that. I've had some dreams where it's like it's prophetic, but I'm guessing that maybe it was given to me by the AI, so that there's some truth to it, there's some falsehood to it as well. So if I come out and say, oh, I had this dream, then later it doesn't come true, people will be like, come on, man, because I don't think we are one with our spirit yet, so we don't know. We don't get the true interpretation. We don't know ourselves that well. Our subconscious mind is not in sync with our conscious minds, right? So I believe the AI is training in every aspect of human life, and prophecies and religion and beliefs. These are important aspect of human life. So if the AI is not training in that, then come on. So a lot of people who are getting prophecies, I don't blame them, right? They believe in what they believe in. So they believe that it is God who is guiding them to this, right? But anyway, so I think that there will be like a counterfeit awakening, right? You will get these people who are now waking up because of the things that are being revealed, and so they're the new activists fighting. So right, so the because like as I'm saying, right, let me just start reading it again. I think that the month or two or maybe 4 months before the time reversal, and I say 4 months because of a dream I had in which I saw full moons, right? This may be a dream, and I've heard other people say they've had this dream before too. So the 4 moons may be four leaders or four generals or something like that, right? Or it may just be actual 4 moons. Maybe Nibiru would come in and there will be 4 moons in the sky, right?
So I'm adding a little bit of an edit here because YouTube took down the original video because of some medical misinformation, I guess. And that's why in this video you would hear me say V's instead of the actual names. So another interpretation I came with that's possible for the 4 moons could be four plagues, right? And you would see in the as the clip continues that I talk about seeing 5 moons, but one fell from the sky because it wasn't a real moon. This could be the planned one that we dealt with um, in the last few years. So probably not a real plague from the Lord, if you know what I mean.
In another post, I had said 4 moons, not five, because one other dream I had, and this is where also I think sometimes the AI, right, tries to influence some of the things so that it puts falsehood in it, right? In one other dream, I saw 5 moons instead of four, and I was thinking, wait a minute, I had seen 4 moons, so why are there 5 moons? But then all of a sudden, the fourth one was revealed like a spacecraft, and something hit it and it fell from the sky, right? So in one other post, I said 4 moons, not five. But the 4 moons could also be like 4 months, 4 months of warning, right? So anyway, I think that the month or two or maybe 4 months before the time reversal, they'll start revealing things that they've previously censored as conspiracy theory in a counterfeit awakening, because the devils will have their agents and prophets who arise from this counterfeit awakening as the new leaders into the new movements, right? So you know that in every movement, in every true movement, in every truth and movement, they try to hijack it. They try to insert people there that will control the narrative, gatekeepers, right? So they would cause this for fake awakening so that they can have people who would be leaders in these movements, right? So by all accounts, these new activists, the new gods, would seem sincere and truthful. So I put hashtag old gods Ragnarok, because in Ragnarok, which is the apocalypse in Norse mythology, the old gods are overthrown, right? And the new gods form. But in fact, new gods are the old gods, right? Because you have to know that it's like I said one time before, you could have a slave trader, right? Who was a jinn, but he came as a human being and he was a slave trader. But then he died as a human being, but because jinns live longer and he was just possessing a body, he could come back a few hundred years later and become, as a black person this time, and become one of these activists for anti-slavery, right? But it's the same person, the same devil, right? So basically, Ragnarok talks about the overthrow of the old gods, right, and the new gods coming into their power, right? So anyway, this is basically the post I wanted to make on why I think what I think they're waiting for as a singularity, right? And why the
V's.
may be important, because it's a time when we may be ascending. So they're trying to change the physical realities in our bodies so that we do not respond to that ascension command, right? So that we're no longer like the DNA. Our DNA basically is like our antenna, and everything we go through in life, even the mutations, I'm talking about the natural mutations, right? It's almost like the Lord is fine tuning each person's DNA to receive their own specific command, right? So if they can influence that and put in their falsehood, right? Put in their, like some people call it serpent DNA or whatever, right? Or untwist the DNA. Let's say they remove it altogether, right? Because we know that they can print artificial DNA and insert it into organisms, right? Even in cloning, what do, right? They can remove the material, DNA material in the nucleus and insert a fertilized like material, right? So these are things they can do, right? And if they tell you they can print an artificial DNA and insert it into an organism, then come on, don't you think they can? I would think, right? Satan would want a way that he is connected to an artificial intelligence, which is connected to every human being. Then they can take human being specific to like maybe an area, or even specific to maybe like a house, right? Because if we have these antennas and communication devices, so you could get to the person specifically, right? Whereas if it's a large antenna, it might affect everybody in the area, right? But Satan might have this power that he can attack that one person, even to the DNA level. So if you attack the person to the DNA level, right, the cell nucleus is like the CPU of the cell. It's like the throne of the cell, right? So if he takes control of that, so that he instructs the cell what proteins to produce. So it's almost like he's overthrowing the nucleus so that the AI becomes the throne of that cell, telling the cell what proteins to produce, what proteins not to produce, what part of the DNA to activate, and what part of the DNA not to activate. So, in fact, some people could say you've been marked on the right arm, right? Figuratively, of course. So, anyway, I hope I got my point across as to Yeah, I hope I got my point across. Peace be upon you, folks. Take care of yourselves.